Hi. Hi YouTube. I wanted to make this video. For starters, before I get into it, it's kind of a clean break from my previous content, which was a bit more gaming focused. I don't know if this channel is really going to feature that as much anymore. So if you know me from that, then this isn't that. I'm sorry. Just this a topic that's really important to me, and I think that there's a lot of there's definitely a lot of misinformation as there is with everything, but there's also just a lack of information. I feel like a lot of people that maybe should know about this do not know about it. Also, mind I'm doing this in one take, and I'm bad at looking at the camera, so you know what? I'm making this for informational purposes for the most part, so it is what it is. And that is public education in the United States. Now, currently, the discourse on this, unfortunately, is about preserving the Department of Education versus abolishing it. That's kind of the argument going back and forth right now. And, well, I do think that the efforts to, defend the institution against further siphoning off of money have some kind of they definitely have a usefulness to them to defend the institution. Unfortunately, it's a thing of it has never been a part of the discourse what should actually be done in a positive manner about education in this country, in the country of the United States. And now because of the Trump administration coming in saying they want to abolish it. Now the conversation has to be about preserving it. But I'm going to go ahead and not engage in that conversation and instead lay out some things that maybe people don't know that they should know. So I was watching a Twitch streamer talk about the issue very much along the lines of preserving versus the attempts to abolish it. Who knows? By the time tomorrow rolls around, it might actually be abolished. Apparently, it was paused today, but and the line was very much along student loans for college and things like that, and what the Department of Education does do, or the actual functions of it, which I think is a worthwhile conversation to have. But it's also part of a larger conversation about education, public education in particular, that has never really had a clear, there definitely needs to change, and we don't really have a clear understanding of it. So the most important thing I want to point out is the funding structure, because in this streamer's chat, I saw a lot of people saying, oh yeah, most of the funding for education, they weren't talking about college or anything in particular, they're talking about education in the country, public education in the country. They said most of it is federal. I don't know where this, because it wasn't just one person who said this. This was several people typing this and asserting this, that most of it is federal. This is very not true. I really want to get that clear, that it's mostly not true. Now, let me explain how funding for education, public education, works. Now, it might be that this I'm not going to assert myself, but it might be possible, because I haven't looked recently, that the majority of students and teachers who are in the public education system are reliant or dependent, you could argue, on federal funding. But I know for a fact that the majority of districts, public school districts, the districts themselves, not student populations, not teachers working in schools, are not dependent on federal funding. That the districts are funded not in a way that is intuitive for how most of the world funds them. So education in the United States sort of has a different blueprint, a different foundation that is very much outdated and very bad and not functioning very well. But let me just say factually how it is. Most of the funding for public school districts comes from local property taxes, if those local property taxes fulfill it. Okay? So, and if they overfulfill it, that money doesn't get redistributed. All right, this is very key. I'm talking about local property taxes from people from the property value of people living in that district, not even the state government, in that local district. They will take the property tax, okay? And then it will either, I think states have a mandatory amount that they have to provide, and then they'll provide a little extra depending on the situation, and then if there's any need left over, the federal government will come in, right? Which is why a lot of there's a lot of very populated public school districts in the country that need a lot of federal funding, because the local funding can't, it's not sufficient at all, and the states don't do enough. But I'm talking in general, the way the system works is it's property taxes. Local, not even. You'll find in a lot of districts, the states are not provide, like the majority of the funding, over 50%, 60% is local property taxes. So that is just how it works. So you'll have the local taxes, then you'll have some state funding, and then you'll have some federal funding. And in the most need-based, sorry, I'm actually about to burp. Wow, insane. In the most need-based districts, the districts that do need a lot of funding and the local taxes aren't sufficient, then that's when the federal U.S. and that is important that they do step in, because those districts are entirely dependent on that funding. But then there's, I would say most districts just aren't. And what you have to understand about the system, that's first off factually how it works. And a lot of people seem to think that, oh, it's all federal. No, if you are in a community of any amounts of, wealth, if you're in like any sort of even average or moderate amount, like that is just funding the schools, right? And schools basically get what schools get, and how well that those districts are funded is mostly based, even with the federal government trying to come in, it is the quality of those schools is mostly reflected by the property values there. So that's what people really need to understand. And the second is that, yes, that sounds really dumb, right? It's incredibly inefficient. It's a stupidly inefficient system. It's ridiculously inefficient. And the thing is, like, all these education reform, like almost always 99% of the time you hear the words education reform, it's some scheme to siphon money out of the public education system, right? To make schools to make them worse funded, right? And abolishing the department. I said abolishing. Come on, really? Let's frame it up. Abolishing the Department of Education definitely will do that, right? It will siphon, like, that's just money that's gone right out of the public education system, and that will make it worse, right? It'll make it worse. But even without all that, right, let's say all these siphoning attempts, whether it's like charter schools, voucher systems, pushing for private schools or whatever, which all work to siphon money out and, do the classic playbook of take money out of an institution, then the results of that institution become worse, and then you blame the institution, right? That just happens time and time again. It's clear as day. But even if education is different, and that even if you didn't have anything like that, the system is baked in its foundations to be unequal. Not just a little unequal, horribly unequal. Unequal as in you can have two public school districts that are geographically very close but separated by a highway, and the property values are all different, and then you can have one school that has way more money than it could ever think of using, and then right across the highway there's another school district that gets nothing, right? Or is getting comparatively nothing. It's that horrible. And there's so many real cases of that, and there's the extreme cases, but then even as you go through, bit by bit, it's just horrible. It's inefficient. It's bad. It's one of those systems where it was really remarkable how when the United States after the revolution, we needed to educate our populace. It was really efficient and also very non-controversial, or easier to get through, this idea that, the community, everyone pitches in based on their home value or their property value, and then we can get schools up and running. And it was really good for establishing schools, okay? It was great at establishing schools where because we had none. Historically, it was like, okay, this is fine. It works. It's less aggressive. You know, if you have federal government coming in, that can be a little spicy, especially in early American history, right? That could get violent potentially, having a tax come in from the federal government. But if you have it as a local tax, that was more agreeable to, uh, people. But then the system just stayed that way. It's very funny. This system that was really good at establishing the schools, and then now it's 2025, and the conversation is, how do we keep the system that is fundamentally unequal? And if we don't change the funding structure, it will remain that way. Okay, and it will remain poor in that way. You can siphon it off or not siphon it off. It's gonna not serve people the way it's supposed to. It's not going to provide the way that it's supposed to. And yeah, that's mostly my main point. I'll leave off with a little anecdote. About 5 years ago, I made the mistake of going to graduate school, and I was dipping my toes in the history of education, something that I have studied and am very passionate about. It's my main, I guess, my main topic. And I was saying, and this is the one part of the video where I'll get a little prescriptive, and I don't imagine this ever happening unless it's part of a radical program, which occurs alongside a bunch of other, programs. So I think that's the only way that education is going to get changed the way it needs to. But I was saying to a Dutch exchange student who was in one of my classes, a foreign exchange student, I was like, yeah, we just need to, and I said this bluntly, and I believe this now still, like, what actually does need to happen is not like preserving the Department of Education or any of these stupid reform plans that aren't really about reform. They're just about siphoning money off and making the institution worse. Is we just need to really nationalize all these public school districts. We need to nationalize them all. Every single one and every private school should be outlawed, and the funding should have, actually be done in an intelligent and efficient way, right? Distributed in an intelligent and efficient way. It should really just all be nationalized. Like, that seems pretty, I mean, that is literal common sense, but it makes sense and it would work better. And this Dutch Netherlands student was like, oh, I'm not gonna do it next time. He's talking about how it'll never happen. I'm like, fuck, I didn't say any of this, but honestly, looking back on it, fuck you, because you have the privilege of being from the Netherlands, and just because of fucking Napoleon Bonaparte, who decided to invent the modern concept of a nation and the fact that, all these schools should be funded from top down and have, intelligent and efficient funding as part of a modern nation state. Just because you got owned, okay, you got owned and you were forced to live under a better system, and now you're a product of that system. You get to tell me, an American who has a shit system, because we didn't fucking Napoleon gave up over here. He gave up. He didn't take over here. We had our own shittier revolution. You have to tell us that we can't have it good by circumstance. Well, no, I think we should have it good, and I think we all should have good everyone should have good outcomes. Teachers should have good job security. There should be a good a good standard that's applied to all schools, for teacher to student ratio, for facilities, for everything that's needed, and especially in how they're funded. And we don't have that. And I don't care if they'll say, oh, it'll never happen. I don't care. So that's basically what I wanted to say. I don't care, because that's what needs to happen. I don't care about what you think, because obviously, and this is the funny thing, I guess a second note, this is all fluff, so if you've been still watching the past 4 minutes, good on you. I'll keep it short here, but Joe Biden, there's a 0% chance he would nationalize education. Kamala Harris, 0% chance. Trump, definitely 0% chance. But that's not really what we should be concerning ourselves with. We should be concerning ourselves what is necessary, what do we need to do to actually fix things. And yeah, so my prescriptive is a push. It's definitely not going to happen on its own, but my main point is everyone should know that it's a fundamentally unequal funding system. It's designed, maybe not designed, but it does inevitably produce unequal, or is unequal, or isn't going to give someone. There's going to be some, depending on your community, you're just not going to get the opportunity. That's it. That's how our public education system works. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.